Okay, I welcome you once again to this lecture. We are almost coming to the end of this course unit, Institutional Framework for Agroecology. Of course, I will change. My name is Rogers Mutevere from the Department of Agriculture and Resource Economics at the Faculty of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences at Mountains of University. We have so far covered so many topics. We started with the introduction, looked at the institutional framework introduction, then the policies, we looked at the marketing discourses, we looked at the certification and standards. Now we are coming to the contemporary crosscutting issues. The word contemporary itself here means it's contentious, it's revolving or something that is affecting almost the big masses. But here we're looking at the cross-cutting issues tells us that the agroecology itself is not a standalone. There are many other issues that may affect the institutionalization of agroecology. If you're talking about the institutionalization of agroecology, there could be the issues of gender. There are issues of what we call the invasive species. The invasive species, we are looking at these, what I'm going to use the word alien species. Within our farms, there are certain strange species that come and they are, or maybe weeds. They emerge within our crops, and yet we are saying don't use chemicals. How do we manage these strange species? They were not original with us. We don't know where they come from. Maybe they were because of the climate change. A certain new weed appears in your garden. How do you control? That's what we call the invasive species. It was not originally there, but it appears. Gender issues, we talk about the culture. The culture is changing. We talk about indigenous knowledge also coming in. Where are the rainmakers in your areas? We are talking about the rainmakers. By the way, I used to participate in these activities of rainmaking. You give me some meat, chicken there, some purpose and fire, then we agree that this rain should only rain at a certain time. And we have so many rainmakers. Others at Barrio, they say, you give me the cloth, one of the cloths of the deceased. We deal with that. There's a lot. And some people are talking about what we call this lab, which we call the Kimongo. People have it in the garden. They say says that if you plant it on the garden side, people will not come to dance around your garden. That's indigenous knowledge. But the science behind that, this crop is a nitrogen fixer. It fixes a lot of nitrogen for the benefit of the crops in the neighborhood. And then eventually they said the night dancers did not reach here. When actually it is the nitrogen fixer that did that. Where are our birds which used to tell us about time? We have the local birds which we call the Bisamtutu. Even recently, we had the birds which tell us about the seasons of the grasshoppers in the Soroli. Where are they? Are they still coming? So all these are kind of changing. That's why we're calling about contemporary issues. So now recently we have what we call the artificial intelligence, the robots coming on our farm. And we talked about promoting both gender, women, children, disabled. How are you going to employ a disabled person to work on your garden when there's a robot which can do the work of 100 disabled men in a day? So is our agroecology going somewhere or somewhere? So we are going to discuss those throughout this topic, and here I start with the invasive species. Sometimes we call them the alien. Those of you who watch movies, we have what we call the zombies. They look like human beings and they are very tough. They bite you, you die. They can shoot, you shoot, they don't die. They're saying maybe there are some human alien species coming from another planet, but they just come here to use them in the war. So those ones can be an example of an invasive species in that context. But also in our gardens, we're talking about some weeds that we really did not know. They are very common in the parks. Yeah? That's why you see it comes and colonizes a very big area. So look at the invasive species as a weed that really colonizes. It's non-native. That's the word alien. That's non-native. It's alien in that ecosystem. So meaning that you may not be knowing it here, but some people in Uganda already know it. It was there. But once it moves from Uganda and comes into this other ecosystem, then it becomes alien to this ecosystem. And some species, such species can also be indigenous or non-indigenous species, but they are known to colonize the ecosystems heavily at the expense of the native, ecologically favored species. When it comes, it will kill others which are there. Now some people are already talking about fear banana, that when it is growing, other banana will not grow well. Can we call that as an alien species? Maybe, because maybe fear was not original here. Why is fear not growing with others? And other banana were growing with others very well. So could it be an alien? I'm not saying that, but you can think through it. But of course, in crop science, there are certain plants which you could say they are allelopathic species. Allelopathy means that they produce certain chemicals or certain environmental condition around which is not favorable for other plants. So the invasive species are characterized by this. Some of you already know this. They tend to grow in diverse environment. They grow almost everywhere. These are like the characteristics of weeds that you saw in Senior 2. Their allelopathic qualities, I've just talked about that. That they increase the mortality of others through producing chemicals. That's allelopathy I was talking about. Others are invasive. They invade other species. They trigger the parasitic plant. They can reproduce faster than the native species. For them, when they come, eventually they will multiply very fast. They have better and viable methods of dispersal. Others have rapid growth and they are more competitive. And since they are not in their natural habitats, they are invasive, they have very few predators. Because the predators, if they are birds which have been picking something, they don't know it. So for them, they are not disturbed by any organisms in the environment. Because the organisms, what will be the predators, do not know them, they cannot eat them. So they grow freely. Of course, I'm not going to discuss so much about managing these. Because the way we manage them is the same way we manage them as weeds, because these are unwanted plants within our gardens. So we can prevent them we can manage them through preventive measures, things like you make sure they don't come to your area. That is, prevent the introduction. That's why we have issues like quarantine. Make sure that you don't transfer a planting material like banana from Kawarole to Chinjojo. So you are preventing the introduction. Maybe it is carrying a certain oxalis or miniambos that would go the other side that was not originally there. Then we have also effective legislation that's now the quarantine. Make sure there is stopping the spread. There is early detection and eradication. If you detect, make sure you eradicate it early. And then lastly, we have monitoring the territory and invasive species. I will give an example of what we call the twig borer for coffee farmers. Most of you are coffee farmers or you are friends, so you have been doing extension. You know, the twig borer I'm talking about, it's a very serious pest that has come almost in most coffee plantations across the region. It's there, it comes and it spreads very fast and then eats the twigs. And we call it the twig borer. So if we can get a way of making sure it doesn't come into your garden by either spraying and maybe also making sure that you spray whenever you see it and remove the twigs and burn them, make sure it doesn't spread the whole garden. It will be a good practice. Now mechanically, we can also do away with invasive species through physical removing. We can also do it by uprooting, and we have other methods like which avoiding vegetative propagation. And then the chemical methods, I will not dwell so much about this. I've talked about the chemical control, but of course this contravenes with the fair trade organic standards. So organic fair trade doesn't support this. And biological methods where we're using the natural enemies to make sure it is able to consume this invasive species. And then controlled burning is also another method that you can make sure we manage this invasive species with use of fire, and then you can make sure we destroy the seeds, make sure they don't germinate. Now the next cross-cutting issue here is the biotechnology. Most of you have been talking about genetic engineering. Now biotechnology itself is defined as a technological advancement which uses biological systems and living organisms to make or modify the product or process. Now, most of you have been talking about GMO, genetically modified organisms. Sometimes we use the word genetically engineered. So it means certain genes have been changed, have been engineered to make something look different. We have seen this in broiler chicken, we have seen this in fruits, but somewhere this is I talked about the Bill Gates and Belinda project. They will kill the natural seeds and then produce these other ones which are not able to propagate naturally. Each time you have to plant, you have to go back and buy. Our old mango where you would throw, which is in Mwen and everywhere, is disappearing. They are bringing these big mangoes. It will never grow. You have eaten it, that is all. But the other ones were propagating themselves. So ours has been now genetically engineered through what we call the biotechnology. So we are saying that the biotechnology can be bad and can also be good. How does biotechnology promote agriculture? Yes, it has an environmental impact. They promote environmental quality and species biodiversity. Somehow it impacts. Sometimes we are losing the species biodiversity because we are fixing. But also, it may also increase the economics because you will sell big mangoes at high market. But also, under social impact, not much positive impact. It doesn't have much because biotechnology promotes the use of machines and use of chemicals at the expense of human beings who will be offering labor. So that's the biotechnology. So somewhere biotechnology undermines agroecology practices, and of course, as I have already mentioned, that sometimes it may promote the use of machines, the use of chemicals. If you are growing mangoes, you have to spray them almost every day. And women cannot be involved in spraying because maybe it has a health hazard. It is affecting maybe the fertility rate. So there are many issues in which biotechnology may be undermining agroecology, because agroecology promotes the inclusiveness and biotechnology instead undermines the inclusiveness. It's something that you have to do it at large scale to be able to benefit, but the agroecology promotes diversity, and this one works well on monocultural systems. So another cross-cutting issue that we would need to discuss is the gender issues. Now, with gender issues, we see the word gender itself is different from sex. Yeah, if I may ask, what's the difference? Sometimes in some form they say indicate your gender, and another one indicate your sex. What's the difference? From the gender science, they say sex is a biological concept of whether something is male or female. But gender is the role attached to these sexes. The role attached to being male, and the role attached to being female. But also now the gender dimension is expanding to cover issues of ability and disability, youth, the elderly, all those they are talking about social groups now. So the responsibilities attached to different social groups is what we call gender. Then sex is just a biological aspect of whether something is male or female. That's the difference between gender and sex. So please always don't confuse the two. Now, gender does not just mean the needs of women, like most of us have taken. When you say, where is the gender balance? They are talking about women. And now, because of that concept, that understanding, our boy child is dying because there is thought of including the girl child everywhere, girl child. Now, when they are taking children to school, they take the child to Chevan, the girl child to Chevan. And in a boarding school, then the boy child, they say, this one will also be grazing animals, then they take him to Chindo JSS. So, eventually, after promoting this woman, the question is, who is going to marry her? Because the other one has gone into maybe border is not really up to the standard to marry this highly educated lady who has been promoted. So also gender issues are very key in agroecology, as we shall explore in our next lesson. We shall look at the limitations and how agroecology incorporates the gender aspects within the production. Thank you.